Confidentiality is roughly equivalent to privacy. Measures undertaken to ensure confidentiality are designed to prevent sensitive information from reaching the wrong people, while making sure that the right people can in fact get it. Access must be restricted to those authorized to view the data in question. It is common as well for data to be categorized according to the amount and type of damage that could be done should it fall into unintended hands. More or less, stringent measures can then be implemented across to those categories. Sometimes safeguarding data confidentiality may involve special training for those privy to such documents. Such training would typically include security risks that could threaten this information. Training can help familiarize authorized people with risk factors and how to guard against them. Further aspects of training can include strong password and password-related best practices and information about social engineering methods to prevent them from bending data handling rules with good intention and potentially disastrous results. Next on the list, we have integrity. Integrity involves maintaining the consistency, accuracy, and trustworthiness of data over its entire life cycle. Data must not be changed in transit, and steps must be taken to ensure that data cannot be altered by unauthorized people, for example, in a breach of confidentiality. These measures include file permissions and user access controls. Version control may be used to prevent erroneous changes or accidental deletion by authorized users becoming a problem. In addition, some means must be in place to detect any changes in data that might occur as a result of non-human caused events, such as electromagnetic pulses or server crash. Some data might include checksums, even cryptographic checksums for verification of integrity. Backup or redundancies must be available to restore the affected data to its correct state. Last but not least is availability. Availability is best ensured by rigorous maintaining of all hardware, performing hardware repairs immediately when needed, and maintaining a correctly functional operating system environment that is free of software conflicts. It's also important to keep current with all necessary system upgrades. Providing adequate communication bandwidth and preventing the occurrences of bottlenecks are equally important. Redundancy, failover, and even high availability clusters can mitigate serious consequences when hardware issues do occur. Fast and adaptive disaster recovery is essential for the worst case scenarios. That capacity is reliant on the existence of a comprehensive disaster recovery plan. Safeguards against data loss or interruption in connection must include unpredictable events such as natural disasters and fire. To prevent data loss from such occurrences, a backup copy must be stored in a geographically isolated location, perhaps even in a fireproof water-safe place. Extra security equipments or software such as firewalls and proxy servers can guard us against downtimes and unreachable data due to malicious actions such as denial of service attacks and network intrusions. So now that we have seen what we are actually trying to implement when trying to protect ourselves on the internet, we should also know the ways that we actually protect ourselves when we are attacked by cyber organizations. So the first step to actually mitigate any type of cyber attack is to identify the malware or the cyber threat that is being currently going on in your organization. Next, we have to actually analyze and evaluate all the affected parties and the file systems that have been compromised. And in the end, we have to patch the whole treatment so that our organization can come back to its original running state without any cyber breaches. So how is it exactly done? This is mostly done by actually calculating three factors. The first factor is vulnerability, the second factor is threat, and the third is risk. So let me tell you about the three of them a little bit. So first on the list of actual calculations, we have vulnerability. So a vulnerability refers to a known weakness of an asset that can be exploited by one or more attackers. In other words, it is a known issue that allows an attack to be successful. For example, when a team member resigns and you forget to disable their access to external accounts, change logins, or remove their names from the company credit cards, this leaves your business open to both unintentional and intentional threats. However, most vulnerabilities are exploited by automated attackers and not a human typing on the other side of the network. Next, testing for vulnerabilities is critical to ensuring the continued security of your systems by identifying weak points and developing a strategy to respond quickly. Here are some questions that you ask when determining your security vulnerabilities. So you have questions like, is your data backed up and stored in a secure offsite location? Is your data stored in the cloud? If yes, how exactly is it being protected from cloud vulnerabilities? What kind of security do you have to determine who can access, modify, or delete information from within your organization? Next, like you could ask questions like what kind of antivirus protection is in use? What are the license currents? Are the license current? And is it running as often as needed? Also, do you have a data recovery plan in the event of vulnerability being exploited? So these are the normal questions that one asks when actually checking their vulnerability. Next up is threat. A threat refers to a new or newly discovered incident with potential to do harm to a system or your overall organization. There are three main types of threat: natural threats like floods or tornadoes, unintentional threats such as employee mistakenly accessing the wrong information, and intentional threats. There are many examples of intentional threats including spyware, malware, adware companies, or the actions of disgruntled employees. In addition, worms and viruses are categorized as threats because they could potentially cause harm to your organization through exposure to an automated attack, as opposed to one perpetrated by human beings. Although these threats are generally outside of one's control and difficult to identify in advance, it is essential to take appropriate measures to assess threats regularly. Here are some ways to do so. Ensure that your team members are staying informed of current trends in cybersecurity so they can quickly identify new threats. They should subscribe to blogs like Wired and podcasts like the TechGenics Extreme IT that covers these issues, as well as join professional associations so they can benefit from breaking news feeds, conferences, and webinars. You should also perform regular threat assessment to determine the best approaches to protecting a system against a specific threat, along with assessing different types of threat. In addition, penetration testing involves modeling real-world threats in order to discover vulnerabilities. Next on the list, we have risk. So risk refers to the potential for loss or damage when a threat exploits a vulnerability. Examples of risks include financial losses as a result of business disruption, loss of privacy, reputational damage, legal implications, and can even include loss of life. Risk can also be defined as follows, which is basically threat multiplied by the vulnerability. You can reduce the potential for risk by creating and implementing a risk management plan, and here are the key aspects to consider when developing your risk management strategy. Firstly, we need to assess risk and determine needs. When it comes to designing and implementing a risk assessment framework, it is critical to prioritize the most important breaches that need to be addressed. Although frequency may differ in each organization, this level of assessment must be done on a regular, recurring basis. Next, we also have to include a total stakeholder perspective. Stakeholders include the business owners as well as employees, customers, and even vendors. All of these players have the potential to negatively impact the organization, but at the same time, they can be assets in helping to mitigate risk. So, as we see, risk management is the key to cybersecurity. So, now let us go through a scenario to actually understand how cybersecurity actually defends an organization against very manipulative cybercrime. So, cybercrime, as we all know, is a global problem that's been dominating the news cycle. It poses a threat to individual security and an even bigger threat to large international companies, banks, and governments. Today's organized cybercrime far outshadows lone hackers of the past, and now large organized crime rings function like startups and often employ highly trained developers who are constantly innovating new online attacks. Most companies have preventative security software to stop these types of attacks, but no matter how secure we are, cybercrime is going to happen. So meet Bob. He is the chief security officer for a company that makes a mobile app to help customers track and manage their finances. So security is a top priority. So Bob's company has an activity response platform in place that automates the entire cybersecurity process. The ARP software integrates all the security and IT software needed to keep a large company like Bob's secure into a single dashboard and acts as a hub for the people, processes, and technology needed to respond to and contain cyber attacks. Let's see how this platform works in the case of a security breach. While Bob is out on a business trip, irregular activity occurs on his account as a user behavior analytics engine that monitors account activity, recognizes suspicious behavior involving late night logins and unusual amounts of data being downloaded. This piece of software is the first signal that something is wrong. An alert is sent to the next piece of software in the chain, which is the security information and event management system. Now, the ARP can orchestrate a chain of events that ultimately prevents the company from encountering a serious security disaster. The ARP connects to a user directory software that Bob's company uses, which immediately recognizes the user accounts belong to an executive who is out on a business trip and then proceeds to lock his account. The ARP sends the incident IP address to a threat intelligence software which identifies the address as a suspected malware server. As each piece of security software runs, the findings are recorded in the ARP's incident, which is already busy creating a set of instructions called a playbook for a security analyst to follow. The analyst then locks Bob's accounts and changes his passwords. This time, the software has determined the attempted attack came from a well-known cybercrime organization using stolen credentials. Bob's credentials were stolen when the hacker found a vulnerability in his company's firewall software and used it to upload a malware-infected file. Now that we know how the attack happened, the analyst uses the ARP and identifies and patches all the things. The ARP uses information from Endpoint Tool to determine which machines need to be patched, recommends how to patch them, and then allows the analyst to push the patches to all the computers and mobile devices instantly. Meanwhile, Bob has to alert the legal departments of the breach, and the ARP instantly notifies the correct person of the situation and the status of the incident after the attack is contained. And Bob's account is secured. The analyst then communicates which data may have been stolen or compromised during the incident. He identifies which geographies, jurisdictions, and regulatory agencies cover the users and information affected by the attack. Then the ARP creates a series of tasks so the organization can notify the affected parties and follow all relevant compliances and liability procedures. In the past, a security breach this large would have required Bob's company to involve several agencies and third parties to solve the problem, a process that could have taken months or longer. But in a matter of hours, the incident response platform organized all of the people, processes, and technology to identify and contain the problem, find the source of the attack, fix the vulnerability, and notify all affected parties. And in the future, Bob and his team will be able to turn to cognitive security tools. These tools will read and learn from tens of thousands of trusted publication blogs and other sources of information. This knowledge will uncover new insights and patterns, anticipate and isolate and minimize attacks as they happen, and immediately recommend actions for security professionals to take